Hi, I'm Elizabeth Hackford, I'm the Law of Attraction lady, and in one of my update videos I said that I was going to produce a video about when I went on a raw foods diet, and this is that video, so stay tuned to find out what happened. It was a really interesting experience. So about 12 years ago I used to live in Dubai, and I had just arrived in 2008. And the market was really booming at the time. I was actually taking up my job as a headhunter back then. Now, Dubai is a very interesting community. About 60% of the population are South Asian, so there are a lot of Indians there, and there are a lot of people practicing yoga and all sorts of things. And I had been networking. I'd met this very nice Indian lady, and she tuned into the fact that I was very spiritual, and she recommended that I went on this particular yoga course. It was a 10-day course, 10 consecutive days, every evening for 2.5 hours from 7:30 p.m. So it fitted in very neatly with anyone who was working like I was. So I subscribed to this course and went along thinking it was a yoga course and that I was going to be doing lots of great stretching and breathing exercises. And we all sat down in a room. There was about 40 of us. Everybody else in the room was South Asian, Indian, Sri Lankan, Bangladeshi, apart from me and 2 other German ladies. And we sat and listened to this Indian guru explain his philosophy on life. And he talked a lot about energy and the spiritual energy in the human body, and how there's too much around us and too much of what we consume that is ruining and blocking our energy systems in our body. And he talked a lot about the breathing process and our diet. And he explained that really there's no point in eating any food unless it is raw. His philosophy was that all food we should consume should be raw vegetables. And raw because that meant the vegetable still contained its spiritual energy. Even if you just steam broccoli for 2 minutes, he said 50% of its nutritional energy and its spiritual energy is diminished. So carrots baked in boiling water for an hour, he reckoned were of zero use nutritionally and energetically. And he explained this whole philosophy about why we should be eating raw foods. And of course, there's no meat in his diet, and there's no eggs, there's no alcohol, there's no toxins, there's no caffeine, there's no smoking, of course. And in fact, after listening to him for an hour, and I thought everything he said was very profound and very interesting, we then got up to do some stretches, but these weren't the kind of yoga stretches that I was expecting. It was more like a group of primary children in a nursery school, waving your arms in the air, running around the room, and just literally loosening up the body. So for the whole 10 days, we didn't actually really do any what I call traditional yoga moves or poses or sun salutations. We just did various breathing exercises, and we listened to this Indian guru explaining his philosophy, and he'd give us a piece of the jigsaw every night as we went to these sessions. And so on the first night, at the end of the session, he said to us, your homework for tomorrow, Monday, is that you reduce your alcoholic intake completely. If you like to drink coffee or tea, if you intake caffeine, usually in your diet, reduce that intake by 50%. If you're a smoker, smoke only 50% of what you would normally smoke. And either you're going to be 100% committed to this or you're not. It's up to you. But this is what I'm asking for you to do. And come to the session tomorrow on Monday, just that bit more cleansed. So I thought, crumbs, that's going to be hard. I'm not a smoker. I do like a drink, but giving up alcohol is easy for me for a week, for a month if I need to do. But giving up coffee was a little bit more of a challenge. But I thought, okay, he's asking us to drink 50% of what we would do normally. I thought I can manage that. So the next day, sure enough, I drank about 50% of the normal amount of coffee I would drink. And I felt a little bit achy. I had a little bit of a withdrawal headache, but I was okay. And we went to the session again on Monday evening. Now, on the Monday evening, he developed the philosophy a little bit further. And he asked us to start replacing all our cooked food with raw vegetables instead. And it turned out that they were going to provide an evening meal for us at every single one of these 10 sessions. And we'd had a meal on the Sunday night as well. Really healthy, nutritional meal made from purely raw vegetables. So dinner was taken care of, but for the rest of the week, I was going to have to sort out my own breakfast and lunch containing only raw vegetables. So for breakfast, I decided to try eating asparagus, cucumber, zucchini, carrots and mushrooms and tomatoes and dried figs. We were allowed dried fruit, so that was okay. For lunches, I went to hotels and went to their salad bar and just ate stuff from the salad bar. you could do that for a very reasonable cost in Dubai. So I embraced this and went through Tuesday. Now, at the same time, he also said, now on Tuesday, you have to cut out 100%, if you're a smoker, 100% any caffeine that you're consuming. It's a toxin, he said. It's bad energy. So the next day, I gave up coffee completely. And I was already suffering from a withdrawal headache, and that headache just got worse. And I started to get muscular ache as well. So days 3 and 4 were really difficult for me. Fortunately, I wasn't working too hard at the time, so I could actually kind of get through the working day feeling like utter crap and aching all over. And I just thought, I'm going to commit to this. I know it's the withdrawal from the caffeine, and also, frankly, the lack of protein, because I don't really know how to get protein from raw vegetables. I know there are certain superfoods, but I didn't know what they were. I was just guessing. So I wasn't really getting my full intake of protein, and that was causing my muscles to ache. So I just felt really tired and really sleepy, aching all over up until day 5. Now, what was interesting was that on day 6, I woke up feeling absolutely fantastic. And I noticed that my aches had gone, and I just felt incredibly light and incredibly clear-headed, incredibly balanced, and incredibly positive about my situation, my life. Everything had just lifted. All my worries seemed to have gone, and I almost felt euphoric. Day 7, day 8 and day 9, I felt equally euphoric and almost ecstatic. I woke up feeling fantastic. I went through the day. I was never hungry. I looked forward to eating a bit of food, but I didn't need to. It was all raw vegetables. The evening meal they were giving on the course was very nutritious and delicious. I was engaging with the people on the course, everybody around me. I was centered. I was balanced, and I was more in the moment than I had ever been. Now, something else that he was getting us to do each day for our homework was to do these breathing exercises and to meditate. So every day I was also meditating at least half an hour, if not an hour, before I went to work. And I was trying to do these breathing exercises for at least half an hour every day. Strange breathing exercises: in for 6, hold it for 4, out for 6, hold it for 4. And we were holding our hands in different positions. I remember there was one with our hands behind our heads, and it was supposedly to open up different energy channels in our body. And we would be kneeling down and doing these exercises. We would do the exercises every day at the course. But the main focus was definitely about eating raw foods. And the following Sunday, which was basically day 8 in the program, I was still doing my meetings at work and still going to the office and everything. And I had a meeting that morning at 10 o'clock with the CEO of a private bank in Dubai, an international private bank. And he was the CEO. He was managing about 100 people in that satellite branch based in Dubai, in the DIFC, the Dubai International Financial Center. Now, CEOs of private banks would typically give a headhunter maybe 20 minutes of their time. Anyway, I showed up for the meeting at 10 o'clock and we sat down together. And basically, as a headhunter, a lot of people as a headhunter, they like to take notes when they are meeting somebody. Now, with CEOs and someone of this level of importance, I tended to put the notebook to one side and just open up and have a very relaxed conversation and just try and share as much information as possible. A lot of headhunting was about sharing names, sharing information, sharing about who's who in the zoo. So I set the notebook aside so I could have this very relaxed conversation with this CEO. And we sat down at 10 o'clock and we began the conversation. And in this meeting, I was able to engage this CEO so completely that neither of us noticed the time passing. I was so centered and so on top of my game and performing at the absolute peak of my human ability. All of my energy channels were open. I felt light, I felt euphoric, and I was absolutely razor sharp. And this CEO was so taken in and beguiled by me that I kept his attention for 2 hours and 20 minutes. We didn't notice the time passing, but I had kept him in the palm of my hands, completely attentive to the conversation and interested in what we were discussing for 2 hours and 20 minutes. So this 20-minute meeting, or this half an hour meeting that I thought would finish at 10:30, finished at 20 minutes past 12. And it wasn't until he just casually looked at his watch, almost startled, thinking it said 20 past 11, then realising that in fact it said 20 past 12 and saying, I'm so sorry, I've got another meeting. He had a telephone conference at 12 o'clock that day. They'd completely missed, and he wasn't angry with me at all. He knew it was up to him. But he was so engrossed with the meeting because I had kept it in the palm of my hands because I was performing at the peak of my ability. And it was incredible. This time had passed and we hadn't noticed. And I know it was because I was so on top of my game that day because of the course that I was doing. And I felt fantastic. And I think he felt fantastic being with me. So anyway, he said goodbye. And I said, well, I'm just going to stay here, if you don't mind, in this meeting room and make some notes on our conversation. And then the next amazing thing was that I had memorized everything that he had said. And I had been name collecting because that's what headhunters do. Now, part of the reason why I don't carry the notebook with me is because he's much more likely to tell me the name if I'm not carrying the notebook. And I would just casually say, oh, who's doing that these days? And who's his subordinate? And who's his boss? And this guy was giving me all these names. And they were Indian names and they were Arabic names as well as Westerners. And I was taking it all in and I was soaking it all up like a sponge. And I was memorizing it as he told me the names. In my peak performance mode, I was memorizing them and saying them to myself again and again in my head. And so at the end of the meeting, when I wrote my notes, I literally wrote 22 names and their titles that I had memorized in this meeting. I couldn't believe how well I had memorized these names, but literally 22 names I was able to write out. And I went away with about 5 pages of notes that I had just downloaded from my brain after memorizing everything during that meeting. So this was the result of me increasing my vibration to perhaps my highest ever level as a result of going on this raw foods diet and breathing yoga course. And it was absolutely astounding to me. Now, a lot of people have said to me, well, if you were in such peak performance and getting so much out of your life and feeling so joyous and euphoric, why on earth did you stop the diet? Well, the reason why, I mean, a lot of you will understand this, is that I was looking at Wednesday lunchtime, my cappuccino, my Thai green curry, and in the evening a glass of vintage red wine. And I was looking forward to them so much that they were kind of what kept me going, because actually it's hard graft just eating raw foods all the time. Although I was patently aware of how good it was for me, I just thought I would rather live to age 85 with my coffee and my wine and my cooked green curry than live to 120 eating rabbit food. It was fantastic at the time, but it was so hard to think of maintaining it for the long term. 10 days was enough for me eating this raw food diet, and the results of doing that were astounding. They were amazing. And I did think, well, I need to try and carry on some of this. So I do actually still now eat raw vegetables for breakfast every day. And here's a picture of what I eat every day. There's the asparagus, the carrots, the tomatoes, the zucchini, and the cucumber. I ditched mushrooms because they don't keep very well. And actually asparagus doesn't keep very well either. So I have to go to the supermarket every 4 days to buy fresh asparagus. And that's something else that's a bit awkward, is that it's not always in season. Ideally, if you're on a proper raw foods diet, you should eat the foods that are in season, because that's what the human body will digest much more easily at the time of the year. But I stick with my plate of asparagus and I love it. I think it's incredibly good for the liver, it's incredibly good for immunity, and it's incredibly good for the overall digestive system. So I do keep that, and it keeps me fresh and alert in the morning. But could I go back to a whole raw foods diet? I don't know. It's maybe something I'll do in the future. But there's no doubt that by eating healthily, by breathing healthily, by resting and meditating, you raise your vibrations so much. So this is the story I've been so excited about telling you, about how going on a raw foods diet really raised my level of vibration to a level I never dreamed was possible. Well, thank you very much for listening to my video. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, please do subscribe to my channel. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this story, and I hope to see you again on the next video. Bye-bye for now.